Good afternoon and welcome to another Pharaoh stream featuring myself, Pharaoh, and we are once again looking at interwar art at the Royal Academy, but this time it's 1928. Now, I must warn everyone, this is not my favourite year, pretty lackluster, but we will continue on. Even in great ages, there are moments of calm before the storm, and it should take roughly an hour to take us through all of these works. So let's get started with our first piece, and this is by M.M. Howard, Adam and Eve. And this is a first time new artist coming in here. Now, I think it's a woman. I think her name is like Maurice or something. I haven't actually got what the M is here. But she was born in London, and studied at one of the smaller schools of arts, the Cat Cole School of Arts, but then ended up in the Royal Academy groupings. Won numerous awards, and I would say had a relatively successful artistic career. Now, this piece here, of course, is Adam and Eve, but again, I think it shows us the interesting again Quattrocento Renaissance vein that is being pulled up, but added to kind of like more realism, maybe a bit of that sculptural modernism, that kind of deco styling at the same time. And something like this Adam and Eve, where the tree's in the center, you immediately think of actually some of the Gothic Renaissance, Lucius Cranach, for example, but also some of the kind of later, more kind of classicized Renaissance, and this feels to me in a similar vein to that. So it's kind of trad, but also in the context of something a little bit more modern. Now we can see here, this is Eve proposing the apple to Adam. It looks like she hasn't had a bite yet, and we can see the snake wrapped around the tree, the serpent looking at her, and Adam's turning around. I mean, this is quite an interesting pose. A little bit of contrapposto on the leg here, a little bit of emphasis on the right, but it's almost like he's been walking away and has turned around to be propositioned by Eve here. In terms of the background, we've got obviously the tree kind of sits in the center. It's hard. I think there is a little bit of an optical effect here on the actual tree, a bit of bending, although it could just be the way that I've laid the page out. But we've got a fawn which is kind of looking up towards Eve, but then the wolf on the ground. And again, this is a bit of foreshadowing of what's going to happen with the wolf. While the fawn, it's interesting that what are the choices of the animals? Well, I think they're part anthropomorphic in the sense that, the fawn, the deer is often a representation of womanhood, skittish and feminine, while obviously the wolf is the man. But both of these animals, which in Eden would have been in communion with man, let's just say, are both cut off. So if you think about, if you ever try and go up to a deer, they are very undomesticated and will always run away. And obviously the wolf then becomes the enemy of man. So it's interesting, both symbolic choices for the animals, but also represent two animals that in this context are close together, but will be their ties will be broken. So I think on the face of it, it's a slightly uninteresting painting, but I think there is a bit more depth to it when you scrape through, and I like the setting and the kind of tying back to the Renaissance. I mean, I would have liked a bit more of the stylization in the actual kind of coloring. Now, I haven't managed to find the color version of this, but I've managed to find another of her works in the series, and this is the expulsion from the garden here, and you get more of an idea of what she's trying to go for. And I think there's definitely something of like of Botticelli with the Eve here, both in terms of like pose cues and also some of the colouring and styling at the same time. There's also, again, like a bit of Puvis symbolism in here, again, in just terms of the layout. But I feel like this is a little bit too realist to kind of really be top tier, but still a nice little painting to get us kick-started and something a little bit fun. Now, we've got here a piece by Charles Shannon called The Toilet or The Toilette. And as I like to say, I think the toilette is basically an excuse for a nude. Now, Shannon has sort of been stuck, I think, in a quite dull 17th century classical revival vein with an occasional like moment of greatness like the Venus. I thought, again, definitely stood out for me. But I really, this is him kind of turning to like a more naturalist setting, not necessarily classical, but still in a similar stylistic choices. And I think this is so much stronger, both in terms of the colorscape that he's able to tap into. You know, I think it's clear with Shannon's pictures that he's operating on this very specific, you know, like color range. You know, some artists like are just drawn to certain colors and come back time and time again. Puvis, for example, I think in Holman Hunt, etc. There are certain artists you just see the color landscape and you're just like, yes, I know who this is. And you know, for Shannon, it's the kind of the deep blues and the reds, very sumptuous. But I think this is this really lovely moment where, again, yes, it is an excuse for a nude, and Shannon manages to kind of display her very, very nicely, both in terms of kind of accuracy of the nude, but also her character. This is almost like a vanity. As soon as we talk about the toilet, that because of the connection with the mirror, there is the allegory of vanity always is tied into this, and you can see her just gazing into her own eyes there, flicking the hair while receiving all of these gifts by her maid at the same time. And so there's an interesting moment there. There's also this interesting little kind of Van Eyck-esque moment with the circular mirror here, where we're kind of looking in to see who is this person. Doesn't look like a painter, you know. Again, if you think about is it Velasquez, where you can see the painter in the reflection or something. Here you can see that I don't think it is a painter. I think it is another maid in the room. But you can see with the light across there, it gives you the impression of an attic space, gives us some depth to the room as well. On the table, there's this beautiful array of beads, the peacock feather. You know, this is sumptuous aestheticism here. And I like how the maid is also in partial dress as well. So it's almost like a pair of nudes. I mean, does he render the textile with the same depth and ability as someone like Dixie? No, but that's not the point of them. For him, these are like blocks of color and mass, as opposed to these kind of realist. I mean, it gives the veneer of a realist painting, but it really is in the kind of symbolist language. I really like it. This actually comes from a separate book. This is from the studios. They did a mini series in the 30s highlighting some of the best of fine art, and there's a little description here that I'll read out because I thought this is really quite wonderful, and much more erudite than I could say. And there's a few of these this year. Mr. Shannon here depicts a lady standing before her mirror while she considers what trinket she will wear from the cluster which an attendant is holding out to her. A peacock feather on the table amongst the powder boxes and precious stones cleverly suggests all the pride and luxury with which her life is taken up. The richness of the colouring, the deep red of the mirror on the table, and the blue of the background, the gold of the circular mirror in which the lady's head is reflected, gives a remarkably rich effect. We may ask, as Horace asked, Curi religias comam? For whom is she braiding her hair? The artist is a famous member of the Royal Academy who has won many distinctions in the course of his career as a painter of subject paintings and portraits. So there we go. Lovely piece from Shannon. Let's go on to landscape, and we've got another new artist here. This is D.Y. Cameron, Scottish, born in Glasgow, son of a clergyman. Tried to study law, but then ended up into becoming a landscape painter. Also does some kind of like lots of etchings as well. Was included as one of the First World War artists, and eventually knighted, again showing his kind of service to the crown. Now, how would I describe Cameron's style? I mean, I think he does sit nicely within this kind of slew of landscape artists at the time. Definitely more of the kind of the realist school. You can see with some of the renderings, very, very tight. But I think his strengths are in the kind of Clausen colorism elements to it. Like, yes, he is a bit more rendered than some of the other landscape artists, but think about how he's laying out this picture right now. 2/3 of it are on this kind of amazing, beautiful gradient in the sky, which he has not done as this kind of like block color. It's a very subtle shading, giving you elements of the kind of the mist and the kind of clouds all kind of mixed together, and the kind of beautiful shadow silhouette of the island deep in the background. This piece is known as the Holy Isles. So I think this is kind of like off the coast of Scotland, Iona, and all that kind of stuff. It's about these kind of really deep blues and balanced with greens and browns. So it's really a color piece masquerading as this kind of realistic landscape. Very, very fetching. I would say that there are stronger landscape painters, but this one particularly caught my eye this year. Okay, we've got a Griffenhagen here. This one's called Mermaid. He does a couple of these. Again, it's very much out of the Griffenhagen kind of wheelhouse. Symbolist elements, almost kind of like Quattrocentro Renaissance-y vibes to it as well. This kind of very graphic approach, the use of the kind of the dark underpainting to kind of almost line out his drawings. There is more of a kind of a almost Nouveau style with her hair and the stylized waves. I mean, I feel like the Pool of Bethsaida that we had last year was just so strong, and for me was genuinely one of my favorite theological paintings that we've seen so far. That this is a bit of a like a kind of amuse bouche compared to it. We had that kind of hearty meal last time, and this is kind of like a little trifling thing. It's difficult. This picture isn't that great. It's taken from the front of a like a magazine that I randomly had that had this picture on. I mean, again, so I think the colors are a little bit more kind of muted than I think you would see, and again, colors are a really important part of his work. But I just don't like the kind of setup with the kind of the winged angels at the top here. I think it's just a little bit flimsy and a little bit shallow compared to his work, but still nice piece. A nice piece. Okay, Avril Burley. Again, she's another female painter. If you remember, we had her self-portrait a while ago, and again, it's definitely something about these kind of Renaissance vibes. You can see the kind of castles in the background. Maybe something of the kind of I don't necessarily Mantegna, because it's more like maybe like but Bellini after Mantegna kind of style, the kind of more classical Bellini would be more fair, I would say. But this is called the Herald of Spring. So despite these kind of Renaissance vibes, there is also kind of a weird medievalism to them. There are 3 figures. You've got the hornblower here on the right-hand side, the lute player, and then the allegorical spring here. So obviously spring has arrived. She's coming through the countryside to the city, and she's being announced by the trumpeter and the lute player. Again, I think it's like a fun allegorical piece. I quite like I like the pieces. There's some individual elements to this which are really interesting. I think the trumpet player is definitely the most powerful. That she's got him in profile in an almost kind of Romanesque like procession element, and I like the kind of cloak in the background. The lute player again, I mean, total swagger as he's kind of slapping that lute. Brilliant figure, but then I feel like Spring is sort of lost under these two powerful male figures. I feel like with Spring, she just has to have this kind of fecundity and like full of life and bubbliness, and the pose is kind of, she's almost like saying like what's going on. There's not that much femininity to her, I feel like, and I think this could have been a really strong piece, but for the central allegorical figure. And again, I like the background. These kind of, like I said, it's this hill particularly reminds me of Mantegna in my opinion. This kind of like almost Bazzano iconic-esque hill, reminiscent of that. Okay, so we've got the next piece here, which is the head of John the Baptist. Now, if you remember, this is, I think, the kind of part 2 to Salome, which I think is one of Rickett's best pieces, truly masterful, and I just love the Salome there. I think she's brilliant. Now, I've actually had some thoughts since looking at this piece versus the last one. Now, if you remember, there was the top table, and then there was this individual who I previously identified as Herod, and I now think it's Herodia, Herod's wife and mother of Salome, because there was another figure sort of crumpled up next to them, and you couldn't tell who it was. But now we see, I'm pretty sure if you look at the outfit of the other picture, this is it's definitely Herod. So what had obviously happened was that Herod had found out what Salome's request was, and he was really upset, and it sort of folded over on the table, while Herodia sort of sat next to him, totally unmoved at the same time, because she knew what the plan was. Now, this is the moment after John the Baptist had been executed, and you can see here kind of Herod just like fleeing like a like it's almost kind of radioactive, that it's kind of emanating power. Even Salome here is kind of like fainting with the power. I mean, one of the reasons why it's so difficult to identify Herodia is that she is like very mannish, very chiseled cheeks, strong jawline. But again, I think it just emphasizes her kind of powerfulness. Look at where the light's coming from. It's kind of it's emitting from a central place here. So again, look at the lighting for Herod. It looks like it's coming from the right, but then look at the lighting for John the Baptist's face. It's coming from the left. So there's this kind of like, it has this, the actual light point is somewhere like here in the middle between everything. So it gives it this emanating effect from it at the same time. So I also kind of like this kind of Nubian fan waver and these kind of sumptuous textiles in the background, and then the sky itself kind of cracked. This kind of pathetic fallacy, this foreshadowing, this kind of moment of total doom. I mean, I personally feel like the Salome painting is way stronger, just because the figure of Salome is just exceptionally beautiful, and also just, I think, is the best representation of Salome, just full stop. But I quite like, I feel like someone should buy both of those paintings and then like exhibit them side to side, almost like a diptych, and I think that would really enhance the piece, basically. But I love the Herodia here. Very grim and evil, malignant, almost demonic figure with her kind of pointed spikes, these horns coming off her head. Wonderful character and characterization. Definitely like a Rickett's top 10 piece here. Okay, we've got this, a couple of pieces from Charlie Sims. Now, Sims has been relatively kind of normal painter up until this point. And there's a really sad story to these pieces. They are, in fact, what I would say are the most radical paintings that have been at the RA ever. And you can see that there are these two extreme modernist paintings, but also they sort of sit outside of any existing genre. Like they're definitely not, they're not vorticist, but there is elements of vorticism. They're not cubist, but there is elements of cubism. They are something totally, entirely unique. And the story is that Charlie Sims basically submitted 6 paintings, all similar to this, and killed himself. We've got a color version across here. This is a spiritual idea. I mean, the colors are totally wild. There's definitely like foreshadowings with styles for the 50s and 60s, you know, that Sims is predating back in the 20s here. Very radical. Now, let me, again, this was featured as part of a Royal Academy like deep dive. So I'm going to read some of this stuff out for you guys, just so you get an idea of how the RA thought about it. Among the 1,500 works exhibited at the summer exhibition of 1928, there was really only one talking point: the 6 spiritual ideas by Charlie Sims. Tragically, the artist had committed suicide just weeks before the exhibition opened, having submitted the paintings by the required time and then taking his own life on 13th of April, 1928. The paintings were the most advanced stylistically that the Royal Academy had ever seen. The impact of the 6 pictures, all uniform inside, was shown grouped in Gallery 11. The traditional gathering place of works of more modern persuasion must have been extraordinary. 5 of the 6 show a small naked figure adrift a sea of brilliant colour. The final canvas, the rebel powers that the array, has an elderly man, arms outstretched in imitation of crucifix, encircled with a cloud of smaller spirits. Through a maelstrom of cosmic energy appears a gigantic smiling face, or a pair of cradling hands reaching out towards the embodied soul. Yet, the titles make it plain that consolidation is far away. If the universal force appears benign, this is only an illusion. Blah, 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 blah. I'm skipping through all of this, basically. The violent emotion of his final works, along with the visual language used to express it, however, was quite new. To present-day audiences, the nearest point of reference might have been Kandinsky. He's one of the Russian supremacists. You know, he does those kind of like circle or square and white background. And one perceptive contemporary reviewer saw echoes of the Italian futurists who had shown in London before the First World War. For all of his working life, Sims had demonstrated a marked antipathy towards towards the modern, which made his final artistic testament not only surprising but also disturbing. Now, I would say that he lost his son in the war, and I think that had quite a substantial impact on him psychologically. I think it really affected it, and I think that's kind of part of the reason why he kind of quote unquote went out with a bang. Again, I would love to see the RA come back and exhibit all 6 of these paintings together again. Maybe I'll try and hunt down and find out where they are these days, because I would like to see them in person. But I think really sad, but very radical and but very interesting pieces. How well do they sit within the modern canon? Again, they're almost. This will almost sit outside of both modernism and symbolism. Maybe that's where I feel like they're closer towards someone like G.F. Watts or something like that. You know, these little symbolic pieces. There's something El Greco about them as well, like some of the figures across there. So really interesting piece there by Sims, and very sad story. Okay, we're on to the next piece, and this is by Russell Flint, our famous watercolorist, but doing some portraiture. And I thought this was very, very fetching. This is Rear Admiral Murray Suiter. Now, the actual picture that I have in the book shows his full profile wearing the cap, sort of leaning on the side across here. I think it's a very nice portrait. Also, interestingly, one which focuses on the profile. Again, interestingly, this is the first profile-based portrait we've had so far. I think the reason why profiles are effectively easier to draw in my experience, in my tiny ability, but you do lose something in the profile. So not everyone has a strong profile. Some people look best. I think most people look best 3/4. That's why portraitists will go for that. But I mean, we've got to talk about the Admiral's fantastic nose here, his powerful brow, and then look at that chin. That this is Nelson, this is Caesar, this is archetypically like European excellence in a profile across there, and you can see why Flint decided to go for the profile. I love the pose here. So you've got elements of kind of luxury and finery and military. So you've got the medals, but they're kind of not back. They're quite small in comparison to things. You've got the kind of embroidery of the admiral jacket and the hat, but then he's got him wearing an opera cloak, which then becomes part of the piece large. We've also got this kind of like classic Greek motif coming through on the bottom here. So I think it's a really powerful kind of showing the kind of it's a definitely the most playful depiction of a senior general, which again I think shows that the rear admiral wasn't like just a hard ass. He was, you know, a man of character and taste and culture. That's what this is trying to show us. But also, you know, he is very well respected at the same time. And I like this little Greek motif here because it kind of not only does it add a bit of character and interest, like if I think about some of the other portraitists we've seen so far, you know, Dixie would put like a screen or a textile or this kind of luxurious chinoiserie. This is just like straight up manliness. This is tapping into the raw vitality of Greek civilization and showing I am the inheritor of Greece. I am, you know, the Battle of Athens. You know the Athens versus the Persians in their boats and stuff like that. That's what he's kind of harking back to at the same time. Now, with the portrait that exists today, unfortunately, I think they've cut the canvas, and I think this is just a total mistake. I feel like it's so much stronger showing the whole body. For maybe they didn't like the kind of the quasi uniform elements to it, and they were like, oh, let's just put him into his opera gear here. I mean, in terms of the rendering, does it have the same depth and ability as some of our kind of bigger portrait artists? No, but look at the colors here. I just love the reds that he's bringing out in the face, the grays, but then this beautiful blue background. It's almost kind of like a colorful chiaroscuro, you know, at the same time. You've got the value difference, this kind of lightness of the face, darkness of the background and the cloak. But at the same time, there is this, deep color array that's going on: yellows, reds, grays, and blues, and also some lovely detailing like this, the kind of brass collar across here. Magnificent, fantastic, and again, just shows like maybe I was being a bit too down on Russell Flint last time we talked about him. Like, yes, he is a painter of women, but I think stuff like this shows his brilliant range. I would have loved for him to have done a bit more of this, if I'm honest with you, but that's what there is. Okay, on to our next piece here, and we've got the Jongleur de Notre Dame. I'll say that again. Le Jongleur de Notre Dame. There we go. Now, I knew about the story randomly from Panama Hat, who said he had a book about the juggler. I think it's called The Juggler of Notre Dame, which was a kid's book he had growing up. And basically, it's kind of like a medieval story about a peasant boy who stayed at a monastery to like survive through winter. I think his father was an acrobat and he was a juggler, and they kind of went from place to place to place. And the father died, and so he ended up at this monastery for food. And the boy was really sad because he hadn't got any activities to do, so he felt like he wasn't paying his way. And so what he thought he would do is in his head, he said, I entertained the kings and queens and nobility of the country with my juggling and my acrobats. I will do that for the Virgin Mary. And once a week, he would sneak off and then do his juggling and exercise regime. Not exercise regime, but like his act in front of the Virgin Mary. And basically, one of the other monks didn't like this and sort of ratted him out to the abbot master, and so they both spied on him. And there was a miraculous moment where the Virgin Mary statue came alive and sort of patted him down. And so, because it was a miraculous act, he was allowed to still doing his kind of performance, basically. So this is the moment of transformation of the Virgin Mary from statue into figure. And I mean, I love this for several reasons. I mean, firstly, we've got to talk about the almost PRB attention to detail in the piece. Like, look at these lovely encaustic floor tiles there, all with a little French fleur-de-lis hat tip. Look at the beautiful glass in the background. Again, this is just like the glass from one of the Notre Dame chapels. Look at the sumptuous textiles in the background. Look at the fluted columns and bosses and little cabels, I think they're called, across here. You know, this is a piece which immediately roots ourselves in a cathedral setting in a really grand way. Then we've got the two figures. We've got again, this is classic Philpott. You know, he loves his I think it's a specific model. I was reading about it, and he's sort of obsessed with this one, I think, mixed race guy who's kind of like has this kind of ginger mixed race hair. And he's wearing his kind of leotard. The balls are on the floor, showing that the act is finished. You can see, I think he's dropped his monastic robe because he was wearing that to do his performance. And he's sitting there, knees bent, almost in prayer. And the Virgin has descended down. You can see that because her trail's going off up the steps to the altar. Now, we don't actually see the Virgin's face here. We just see, like, even just a slither of the profile. And she's wearing a crown on her head. And I mean, just look at the textiles here. This is okay. There's a couple of different ways to render textile, right? You can focus on different things. Think about that Dixie portrait last time, where he's focusing on the reality, the shine, the colors of it. This, for me, is like, if you see how he's doing it, it's very, very lightly done, right? This isn't showing off the complicated depth of the fabric. This is about the structure, rigidity, and the texture of it. I mean, look at the folds across here. I think this is just so masterful, but also so Gothic at the same time. You know, something like the celebration of fabric in the Dixie vein is more kind of like in the classical vein. You know, it's more like a Fragonard or like a neoclassical Baroque style, while the Gothic was interested in, like, how does stuff drape? How does it sit? How does it cross the body? How is it structured? And that's what we're seeing across here. I love the expression. It's one of exhaustion, admiration, or you can see just the lighting that he's done on the face as well. It's truly masterful. So and the crown details, there is something almost medieval about it. There's a flatness to it. Look how he's got the curve down here, but then all of the pieces kind of sit at the similar height. So he's messing with us a little bit. It's almost like she has been lifted from a page of illumination. Really masterful work from Philpott in an otherwise quiet year. Okay, next we've got another Cadogan Cooper, the PRB guy. Again, I think we've sort of seen his style, and I feel like maybe I've put too many of the same-ish paintings in there. This is again, I'm a sucker for a roundel, so I think this is why I've kind of added it in there. But a nice piece from him. Now we've got a piece from Harold Speed, and again, like Speed for me hasn't quite hit the mark previously, but I think this is definitely one of his best works that we've seen so far, and this is called The Veil of Leuthia. Now, what's going on? Well, we've got this beautiful rocky background. I mean, the background itself, if this was just like a landscape painting, I think this is like masterful. And I particularly love the waterfall here. It's almost kind of like your Byzantine iconic waterfall. But also so real at the same time. Water does flow exactly like that. So I think Speed is walking the line between the symbolic imaginary world and reality so well here. And then we've got these two figures, very, very like portrayed in extreme realism. Like because Speed is such a good draftsman, he just ends up making everything look so real. So we've got this juxtaposition of this almost iconic landscape with these kind of very formal real figures. Like a lady laying out, and then a shepherdess with a couple of cheeky sheep across here. Again, this featured in one of my my books again, so I'm gonna give it a readout here from because it gives a little bit more insight. The artist has here drawn his inspiration from the imaginary mythology of William Blake. Luther's veil is referred to in Visions of the Daughter of Albion, and the figure plucking the inspired flower is a symbolic figure drawn from this book. The other figure was suggested from the Book of Fell, and the two together may be taken as two types of soul states. The rich colouring and company of the picture happily creates an impression which the artist has tried to put into concrete symbols. So, I mean, it doesn't really give much information about it at all, but I like the idea of the two soul states, the kind of almost like shepherdess. Look, she's kind of recoiling at the indulgence and the kind of, she is work, while the other figure is this, she is like, there is the eroticness of it. Like, look at the arc of the back across here, the legs wrapped up with the fabric, but it's also kind of playful, and it's like going for a picnic on a summer's day. That's the kind of soul state across there. So I like this as inside everyone there are two wolves, or inside every woman there are two souls, and they look like either one of these. Definitely one of Speed's best works, and again really showcases his rendering of women, which is exquisite and perfect. Great piece here. Okay, we've got another nude here, and this is by Louis Guinnett. Did I get some information about him? Also that last painting sold for 26,000, so Speed can command a decent price. Oh, wait a second. Sorry, I forgot that I've got the actual poem, a little snippet from here. The Veil of I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly. Luther. Along the veils of Luther, seeking flowers to comfort her, and thus she spoke to the bright marigold of Luther's veil. Art thou a flower? Art thou a nymph? I see thee now a flower, now a nymph. I dare not pluck thee from thy dewy bed. So again, it's that interesting sonification, symbolic figure. Going back to this, I don't have information about the artist. I'm sorry, I'll get it next time. But this is called Ebony, Ivory, Crimson, and Gold. But it's essentially a nude. But what caught me was it's kind of like a mournful nude, and that was like initially I was like, oh no, this is kind of interesting. The nude is almost always a kind of a celebration of womanhood, of their vitality, of their beauty, of their kindness and goodness, and all of their virtue. But this is kind of like there's a deep sadness and melancholy, so you can already tell from her pose. She's slumped on the floor. She's all she's partly in the shadows here. The lighting also is casting these kind of really big cast shadows in the background as well, and like her, you can see it, like her ribs and stuff are shown. The body is folded over, but her beauty's still maintained. She's kind of not looking ahead; she's looking to the side, almost to nothing. And we don't know what the cause of it is. She's partly wrapped up in some of the fabric across there. Now, what about the title of it? Ebony, Ivory, Crimson, and Gold. We can't see the color. Sadly, we do not have the color version of this, so I imagine it's related to the fabric colors, the crimson, gold, black and white here. I think the ebony and the ivory is like relation to the shadow and the lightness of her. But it's something to do with material as well. What is the moment this happens? Is it she's discovered her love has left her and she's going to crumple up on the floor, wrapping herself up in her bed sheets or something like that is how I imagined this piece. But a really novel take on the nude that surprised me and shocked me, and I thought was pretty good. Okay, we've had Philpott's attempt at Venus and Adonis in the kind of post stage, but now we've got Morley's. And again, I feel like Morley is just so good in the mythic and symbolic vein. I just literally wish he had never done a single realist painting and just done stuff like this, because for me, this is just so beautiful. It's up there with kind of Botticelli in terms of its approach to the classics and naturalism. Now we've got Venus, obviously the heavenly goddess, come down to Earth to kind of commune with the beautiful man that she's fallen in love with. And again, what I like about this is it's kind of like Venus unexposed. We had this a little bit with Philpott's Venus as well, and I wonder whether Morley would have seen that and has done this in kind of conjunction with that. But yes, she is nude, but she's turned away from us, so it's not voyeuristic for us, right? But we can see all of these kind of clothes, and I love this beautiful sumptuous belt here, the silks, etc. You can imagine a moment where she has descended from the divine to sit next to Adonis and has immediately disrobed. What is she doing? She is almost grabbing his arm across here while he's kind of looking directly at her. So he's is he like a shepherd or something? I think that's right. That's why he's got the shepherd's staff and the shepherd's helmet. I could be wrong, but he's got the kind of Adonis rod here. Now, what's going on with Adonis? Yes, he's in a casual pose. Is he phased? Is he happy? I mean, I think his eyes are kind of popping out, but I like where Morley's got him looking. It's not Venus's figure; it's her nudity, which is again entertaining. I think it's the kind of the shock of it, but he's also kind of he's it's not like a licentious face. It's kind of a bemusedness. He is he's surrounded by rocks, but he's also a rock of calm. Venus's face is like, look, it's sort of like bags under the eyes. Her arms are desperate. She's kind of like very dour here. This is a desperate Venus. You know, this is the lovesick, the woman of great desire. I just love this Venus here. I think it's just so it's such a brilliant depiction of her. And again, it's so sensual, but also totally, it's almost unerotic. I think it's the most unerotic Venus I think we've ever seen, who's not wearing clothes. You know, her kind of curves have been hidden from us a little bit by the angle here. You get a little bit of, you don't even get to see her bottom. What do you really get to see? Just her back. But because she's hunched over, you don't get to see the kind of long swan-like neck. So weirdly, her sexuality has been kind of repressed and crushed, because this isn't about Venus as the beautiful. This is beauty, like lovesick desire, or kind of like when you want something so much that you go kind of crazy for it. there's a madness to this. This is like, yeah, mad Venus. So super novel. I love the composition. Beautiful rendering here from Morley. Masterful piece. 10 out of 10. Okay, we've got another Meredith Frampton here. This is just this is again we've seen quite a lot of his stuff so far. It's another great piece, very casual again, sort of sitting at home. Um, I mean, one thing to note is his choice for kind of fabrics. For men, it's been kind of simple suits, but for women, like there's no details on the dress. He's trying to create these kind of like simple there's like a purity to the way he chooses models, but also like a prim tuckness. Look at that hair as being kind of um, held together and tightened up, and there's a fastness and a tightness to it. And just in the same way that he's painting his paintings very tightly, so we have the same with the clothes. And this kind of lovely flowers for a little bit of instant at the same time. There we go. We've got a color version, but it was quite small, so it looks. I think it looks even better in the colors. Just I really love his color language and landscape. Very kind of like faded, like high grayscale, so, with all of these as well. Okay, next we've got a Sergeant Jagger, but it's a portrait piece. So very, very rare. He normally does either like the kind of allegorical, symbolical, but this is one of his few portrait pieces, and this is the Right Honourable Lord Hardringe of Penshurst. Now, Jagger's got him kind of non-stylized. So again, he does quite a lot of realism, really, but he does tend to kind of accentuate the features of the men he works with, just in terms of their kind of ruggedness and their face. But I think this is almost like his most real piece. This is also about like all of the kind of detailing on the outfit. Like, look at all of the kind of the chains and medals and swords, etc. Lots of depth here. And then I really like the cloak, which sort of wraps and becomes part of the this kind of molded platform space. So in terms of the pose, they've got him kind of standing up straight, which again is novel in its simplicity, is what I would say. Now I've got a picture of it in real life here. I mean, you can see all the kind of the kind of luxury and depth. Sadly, I think they changed the. I think was there two versions maybe, where in one version they've got it on a kind of a larger stand, and the second with a smaller, and they went for the small pediment. I like the larger one. I think this is cooler with it kind of draping down, and then you've got this powerful. Look at that angular triangle there. Really, really shocking. Really powerful. For me, not Jagger's most powerful work, but I think it is a good I don't know how long I've been out for. Apologies. But Poole is was trained under GF Watt, so he's in that kind of similar school. This is his diploma work for the RA, so they have to submit a work to kind of show their skills. And this is Young Pan. It's a classical piece, but it's almost in the Metrovichian vein in terms of the kind of emphasis. Just so beautifully rendered, but then you've got this lovely, again, almost Attic hair at the top that he's kind of hinting at. I think this is just perfection, just totally brilliant piece. I wish the Poole had lived for 10 more years, because you know that I think he would have produced some really outstanding works and it would have been way more well known than he is today, because his raw talent, like look at the finishing and the rendering of this piece, totally and utterly brilliant. Sadly, that there's only a couple of works. I think there's his lions as part of the Plymouth War Memorial, outstanding. So check those out for sure. But nice piece. Okay, William Macmillan, we've seen some of his stuff previously. He's definitely in the kind of medieval modernism vein. And this is a sun and moon fountain for a forecourt. Now, we're going to see these figures in more detail next year. But just an interesting piece, sort of in the classical vein, but again with this kind of more modernist setting, but more like watch this because it's important to see this for next year. And then we've got another Pegram. So Pegram, who's just kind of been, we haven't seen any of his actual sculpture for a while. He's been doing lots of these kind of strange, like candelabums and designs. Again, I'm going to try and find if there's any more research available to see some of the work that he's done. But I really quite fancied this. There's some really interesting parts here. So obviously, all of the figures that make up the base, they're kind of sitting upon the sphinxes. There's St. Mark's Lion there. I'm pretty sure it's the 4 gospel writers across there. So I think there's so much potential in this piece. I'd love to see what it looks like finished. And again, just so like weirdly novel in terms of the way that he renders from the, like, even his feathers are weird and strange. It's kind of like very different to everyone else. Like you can instantly tell it's a Pegram piece. Yes, it is that kind of academic classicism, but he definitely takes it in a different direction from everyone else. So I feel like definitely a bit underrated now. I'm getting more of a respect from him. Okay, and we're going to finish off with another artist. We've had 3 artists that have died basically after this year. It's been very, very maudlin. And sadly, this is Dixie's last year. Last year, he only got in as president of the RA like two years ago. This is his last submission, and he died shortly after. This is for Mrs. Frank Perhouse. This is his most modern of all of the pieces. You know, I think Dixie is fully moved away from his arts and crafts style and into this more kind of formalistic modern 20s piece. Now, once again, I did manage to find a color photo of this from one of my Dixie book. And one thing you can notice is been repainted. So look, if you look at 2 things, or look at the background, basically, that's the thing that's mainly changed, and he's massively simplified it. So there's the framptification of Dixie here, where he's just trying to simplify it as much as possible. Not one of my favorite Dixie paintings, if I'm honest with you. I prefer him in the mystical. He needs to stay in the mystical realm, but again, showing off his skill with the textiles and colors and fabrics, etc., masterfully done. But just put this in there to kind of a little salute for the master as he passes on. And that is basically it for this year. Like I said, I think maybe I was being a bit down. Like there wasn't that many, a huge number. I think this only had 22 choices, where I normally choose about 30. But there were a couple of standout pieces. The Sims piece, the Rear Admiral was good. The Juggler was great. Maybe I put Morley's Venus and Adonis in there as well. Like if we had a color version, I'm sure that would have done really well. But yeah, lovely pieces. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Please do leave a comment with your favorite piece or your thoughts on today's works. And we're going to go on to the next year, 1929. We're almost hitting the 30s. So thank you very much, and I will see you guys next time.